Have you ever wondered, is climate change real, or is it just a myth propagated by some? This question has sparked countless debates, causing a divide between believers and skeptics. But let's pause for a moment and consider the scientific consensus. The vast majority of climate scientists worldwide concur that the Earth's climate is indeed changing, and human activities are largely to blame. Let's think about it. Our planet's climate has always been in flux, but the rate at which it's changing now is unprecedented in human history. It's not a matter of believing in climate change. It's about acknowledging the irrefutable evidence that points to this reality. Rising global temperatures, melting ice caps, and extreme weather events are not mere coincidences or isolated anomalies. They are all interconnected signs of a larger, more complex issue. Now that we've established the reality of climate change, it's time to see its effects in real time. The early signs of climate change weren't as dramatic as they are now. Yet, they were no less significant. Subtle, almost imperceptible changes began to appear, revealing a shift in our planet's climate that would soon become impossible to ignore. Let's rewind a bit. Picture a world where the summers were just a tad warmer, the winters slightly less harsh. It seemed like an extended vacation season, a small gift from Mother Nature. Little did we know, it was a quiet warning bell. The planet was heating up, and the average global temperature was slowly but steadily rising. Then there were the glaciers. These colossal ice structures, guardians of the Earth's ancient past, began to melt at an alarming rate. Imagine standing on a beach, watching the tide roll in. Now imagine that tide is a wall of ice, retreating, shrinking, and vanishing. This wasn't a dramatic event. It was a gradual process, happening over years and decades. Yet, the implications were profound. The melting glaciers weren't just a loss of stunning natural beauty. They were a vital part of our planet's climate system, reflecting sunlight back into space and helping to moderate global temperatures. As they melted, they released vast amounts of fresh water into the oceans, disrupting marine ecosystems and contributing to rising sea levels. These initial changes were like a whisper in the wind, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Scientists, however, were listening. They began to connect the dots, piecing together a picture of a planet in the throes of a major climatic shift. The world was changing, and these early shifts were the first signs of a much larger transformation. The subtle changes in temperature, the melting glaciers, they were the proverbial canary in the coal mine, signaling a significant shift in our planet's climate. These early signs were just the beginning of what was to come. And as we'll see, the changes that followed were far from subtle. They were dramatic, devastating, and impossible to ignore. But that's a story for the next scene. For now, let's remember that even the slightest change can signal a storm on the horizon. As we entered the new millennium, the effects of climate change became more pronounced. The dawn of the 21st century brought with it an era of unprecedented weather phenomena that left no doubt about the escalating impact of climate change. Heat waves scorched the globe with a severity and frequency previously unseen. Europe experienced its hottest summer in 500 years in 2003, resulting in tens of thousands of deaths. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, North America saw a drastic increase in wildfires, fueled by scorching temperatures and dry conditions. These infernos are a stark reminder of how climate change can exacerbate natural disasters, turning them into calamitous events. But it wasn't just the heat that was a cause for concern. The early 2000s were also marked by devastating floods. Central Europe was inundated in 2002, causing billions of dollars in damage. Asia, too, bore the brunt of torrential rains, with catastrophic floods in India, Bangladesh, and China, displacing millions and causing a heartbreaking loss of life. And then came the hurricanes. These colossal storms, born from warm ocean waters, grew in intensity. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 was a stark reminder of the devastating power of nature, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake and forever changing the landscape of New Orleans. Scientists link these events to the warming of the planet. As the Earth's temperature rises, so does the ability of the atmosphere to hold moisture, leading to more intense rainfalls. Warmer oceans fuel more powerful storms, and increased temperatures lead to more severe and frequent heat waves and wildfires. These events were a wake-up call, but were we ready to answer? As we reflect on the extreme weather events of the early 2000s, it's clear that they were not isolated incidents, but rather harbingers of a climate in crisis. The question remains, were we prepared to heed the warnings and take the necessary steps to mitigate the impact of climate change? The last decade has seen some of the most extreme weather events in recorded history. As the Earth's temperature continues to rise, we've seen the effects in the form of staggering heat waves, catastrophic wildfires, devastating hurricanes, and relentless floods. Each of these events, in their own right, is a powerful testament to the changes our planet is undergoing. Heat waves have scorched our planet like never before, setting new records and leaving in their wake a trail of devastation. Cities once known for their mild climates are now grappling with temperatures that would make a desert blush. The heat is not just uncomfortable, it's deadly, claiming lives and pushing ecosystems to the brink of collapse. Wildfires, too, have become a common sight, their frequency and intensity a direct result of our warming planet. They're not just confined to the usual suspects anymore. Unprecedented places are now experiencing these fiery infernos, tearing through homes and habitats, leaving nothing but ash and despair in their wake. Hurricanes, once a rare occurrence, have become more frequent and more intense. They're not just stronger, they're also slower, causing even more damage as they linger over regions, dumping record-breaking amounts of rain and causing untold destruction. And then there are the floods. Water, the source of life, has turned into a source of destruction. Swelling rivers, rising sea levels, and torrential downpours have inundated cities and towns, turning streets into rivers and homes into islands. These extreme weather events are not isolated incidents. They're part of a larger pattern, a pattern that is becoming all too familiar. We're seeing more of these events, and they're getting worse. Each one is a stark reminder of the price we pay for pushing our planet to its limits. As we continue to push the limits of our planet, we also push the limits of our own survival. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the time for action is now. It's time we stop merely witnessing these unprecedented changes and start doing something about them. Today, we are living in a world that is drastically different from what it was a few decades ago. The once vibrant landscapes are now subjected to the harsh realities of climate change. Trees, once the lungs of our planet, are being swallowed by wildfires, and places once brimming with life are now facing a terrifying loss of biodiversity. Our oceans, the planet's largest carbon sink, are paying a heavy price. Rising sea levels are not just numbers on a chart. They are real, tangible threats to coastal cities and low-lying islands. The once bountiful coral reefs are now bleached and lifeless, victims of warming seas. It's not just the flora and fauna that bear the brunt. Climate change is a people problem too. Extreme weather events, once considered anomalies, are becoming the norm. Unprecedented heat waves are scorching the earth, causing droughts and water scarcity. Torrential rains and hurricanes are battering our coasts, displacing millions. The Arctic, our planet's refrigerator, is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world, causing permafrost to thaw and releasing trapped greenhouse gases. It's a vicious cycle, a feedback loop that accelerates global warming. The signs are clear and alarming. Climate change is not a distant threat. It's here and it's happening now. Our actions, or lack thereof, have pushed our planet to the brink. We are in the midst of a climate crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. But it's not just about doom and gloom. We still have a window of opportunity. We have the knowledge, the technology, and the resources to turn the tide. We have the power to redefine our relationship with the planet, to transition to a sustainable future, and to ensure that the world we leave behind is one our children can thrive in. Our planet is at a tipping point, and we need to act now. If we continue on our current path, what does the future hold for us? This question is not just a philosophical musing, but a stark reality we must confront. Imagine a world where extreme weather events are not the exception, but the norm. Cities that once thrived are now ghost towns, abandoned due to relentless heat waves or drowned by rising sea levels. Agriculture, the backbone of our survival, becomes a game of chance, as unpredictable weather patterns yield either feast or famine. The Arctic and Antarctic landscapes, those vast, icy wildernesses that have long captivated us with their pristine beauty, could be reduced to slushy puddles. They're majestic icebergs, but a memory in the annals of history. The polar bear, the penguin, the seal, and countless other species that call these icy realms home may find themselves without a home, their survival hanging by a thread. Now, imagine a world where these changes force entire populations to migrate. Coastal cities, home to millions, are submerged under the waves, and arid regions become even more inhospitable. The mass migration that follows is not out of choice, but necessity, as people scramble for habitable land and resources. This isn't some dystopian fantasy, but a potential reality if we do not take action against climate change. And it's not just about preserving the world for future generations. It's about preserving it for us, for those alive today, because these changes are happening now, faster than we ever anticipated. But it's not too late. We have the knowledge, the technology, the resources. The only thing we need is the will. The will to change, to adapt, to mitigate the effects of climate change. The will to transition to cleaner, greener energy sources. The will to preserve our planet, not just for ourselves, but for all life that calls it home. The future is in our hands, and the time to act is now. Our actions today will determine the world of tomorrow. The question is, what kind of world do we want to leave behind? While the situation may seem grim, there is still hope. We hold the power to change the trajectory of our planet's future. It starts with the choices we make every day, from the food we eat to the way we travel. Firstly, we can minimize our carbon footprint by adopting sustainable practices. Consider eating less meat and more plant-based foods. The livestock industry contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions, and by shifting our diets, we can help reduce this. Secondly, we can choose to travel smarter, opting for public transport, cycling, or walking instead of using personal vehicles can significantly reduce carbon emissions. And when it comes to long-distance travel, consider the environmental impact of flying and look for alternatives where possible. Next, we can make our homes more energy efficient. Simple steps like using LED lights, insulating our homes, and using energy-efficient appliances can go a long way in reducing our energy consumption. Moreover, we can harness the power of renewable energy by installing solar panels or purchasing green energy from our utility provider. But it's not just about individual actions. We must also push for systemic change. We need to advocate for strong climate policies that limit emissions and transition us towards a sustainable future. This includes voting for leaders who prioritize the environment and holding corporations accountable for their environmental impact. And finally, we need to educate ourselves and others about the realities of climate change. Knowledge is power, and the more people understand the urgency of this crisis, the more likely they are to take action. Remember, every action, no matter how small, can make a difference. It's like a ripple effect. Your choices can inspire others to do the same, creating a wave of change that can reach far and wide. This fight against climate change is not just about the polar bears or the melting ice caps. It's about our communities, our health, our future. It's about ensuring that our children and grandchildren inherit a world that's safe, clean, and thriving. It's not just about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves. Climate change is not just a problem for future generations. It's a problem for us, here and now. This isn't a preview of a dystopian sci-fi movie. This is our reality. As we've journeyed through the years, we've seen how climate change has already started to rewrite our lives. And it's not merely about warmer summers or colder winters. It's about the extremes, the floods, the wildfires, the hurricanes that are becoming more frequent and more intense, altering landscapes and lives. But this is not the part where we give up. Quite the contrary. This is when we dig our heels in and face the challenge head on. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are not just victims of climate change. We are also the solution. Yes, you've heard it right. Each one of us has a role to play in combating this global crisis. Climate change is not a villain that we can defeat with a single superhero. It's a complex problem that requires a collective response. And here's the beautiful part. We don't need to be heads of state or CEOs of multinational corporations to make a difference. Our individual actions, when multiplied by the billions of people on this planet, can create a significant impact. Think about it. If we all turned off the lights when we left a room, think of how much energy we could save. If we all chose to recycle, think of the mountains of waste we could avoid. If we all decided to eat less meat, think of the greenhouse gas emissions we could reduce. If we all opted for public transport or cycling over driving, think of the air pollution we could prevent. These are not grand, unattainable goals. These are simple, everyday choices that we can make. Choices that, when combined, can tip the balance in our favor. But change doesn't end with individual action. We need to demand more from those in power. We need to vote for leaders who prioritize the environment. We need to support businesses that practice sustainability. We need to hold corporations and governments accountable for their actions. It's time to shift the narrative from doom and gloom to hope and action. Climate change is a daunting challenge, yes, but it's also an opportunity. An opportunity to innovate, to change our habits, to build a more sustainable and equitable world. The clock is ticking, but it's not too late. We can still change the trajectory of our future. We can still write a different ending to this story. The power to change the future lies in our hands. Will you take action?